The $20 billion lie hiding in your sunscreen. The lifeguard was already waving when Mark realized his 6-year-old was red, nose, cheeks, even under the brim of his hat. 2 layers of SPF 100, hours at the beach, and still a burn. He stared at the bottle like it had lied to him. Here's the twist, it kind of did. That giant number you trust mostly measures the rays that make you sting, not the ones that quietly slice through glass, break collagen, and over years raise cancer risk. You slathered hope, the sun said, nice try. Today we're pulling apart the math, the labels, the chemistry, and the money so you can actually be protected. To understand how one number became our sunscreen compass, we need to go back to the moment it was invented, when researchers were desperate to quantify not getting burned, and ended up ignoring the ray you don't feel. We'll follow the split that formed after. The US put sunscreens in the drug aisle and moved approvals like wet cement, while Europe and Asia treated them as cosmetics, added modern UVA filters, and pushed textures people actually reapply. The result is 2 worlds. In one, you can buy Tinosorb S, Uvinol A+, and Mexoryl 400 in daily wear formulas that feel like moisturizer. In the other, you get older chemistry, and a label that shouts a number but whispers about UVA. Meanwhile, there's a $20 billion market built on big digits and cheap filters. The incentives are simple. A higher SPF sells, even if UVA protection doesn't keep up. Retailers love bright bottles and bigger claims. Brands love the margins on legacy ingredients. Lobbyists want the rules to stay familiar. We'll keep people in frame. Parents doing beach math between snacks and shade, runners who think water-resistant means bulletproof, office workers tanning through windows because UVA doesn't care about glass, and we'll make the science human. UVB is the match you feel. UVA is the slow cooker you don't. The broad-spectrum badge means something, but not always what you think. We'll also open the bottle. Absorption studies have found several US filters in blood at levels that triggered the FDA to ask for more safety data. That's not the same as proven harm, but it's not nothing. Add contamination scares, like benzene in some aerosols, and sloppy testing, and you start to see the cracks. By the end, you'll know which filters to avoid and which to trust, why high SPF can trick you into staying too long, and the simple application rules that beat hype. But first, the origin story. Because once you see how SPF was born, one-eyed and wildly persuasive, you'll understand how the lie won. The birth of SPF, a one-eyed number. 3 summers after the war, American beaches swelled with families, radios, and baby oil. Sun meant leisure, proof you weren't in a factory. In the decades that followed, tanning butter, coconut sprays, and Hawaiian, anything sold the same dream. Brown was health. The first screens were crude, thick pastes with red petrolatum and zinc that mostly kept you from crisping. By the early 1960s, a Swiss chemistry student named Franz Grader came off a mountain with a severe burn and a problem to solve. He'd been playing with salicylates in cream, and he wanted a way to quantify protection. The measure he proposed was simple. Take the time it takes to cause a minimal burn on unprotected skin and divide it by the time with a product on. If you burn in 10 minutes bare and in 300 minutes with the cream, that's SPF 30. It worked cleanly, repeatably for one thing, UVB. The shortwave part of sunlight that reddens skin fast and loudly. It was easy to test. Apply a standard amount to a small patch at a fixed light intensity. Wait for pink, do the math. The pain was the endpoint. You could build a system around it. Manufacturers did. UVA, meanwhile, slipped by. It didn't announce itself with sting. It penetrated deeper, past the epidermis into the dermis, slowly unwinding collagen and elastin, throwing off reactive oxygen species, leaving behind wrinkles, spots, and with enough time, DNA damage that matters. But there wasn't a simple, agreed-upon way to measure it. No instant pink, no stopwatch, no catchy ratio. Marketing didn't wait for nuance. Bigger numbers meant less burn, and less burn felt like safety. On drugstore shelves, SPF 4 became 8, 15 became 30, then 50, then 70, and 100. The number got loud. The small print, broad spectrum, barely whispered. Parents bought the biggest digit they could afford and felt invincible until the shoulders told a different story. Here's a micro story that repeats every June. A family hits the beach at noon. Dad uses a spray, 2 passes per arm, mist flying sideways. The kids jump in. Lunch, sand castles, a nap, a second spray at 3 p.m. Everyone feels covered. By dinner, they compare burns, swap blame, and promise to buy an even higher one next time. What nobody in that family knows is that the SPF score didn't tell them how much UVA got through. Their product might meet a minimal, broad-spectrum bar, often a ratio requirement that doesn't rise with SPF, while carrying a UVB-heavy formula to hit that triple-digit claim. That's how you can wear SPF 100 and still rack up a meaningful UVA dose, all while the lack of sting encourages you to stay. Why did UVA get ignored? Practicality. UVB testing had a clean endpoint and could be standardized across labs. UVA demanded longer exposures, subtler endpoints like persistent pigment darkening, and later, in vitro measurements with spectrophotometers and quartz plates. In the 1970s and 80s, those methods were inconsistent, and regulators didn't have a unified test. When the US finalized its sunscreen monograph in 1999, the core metric cemented in public minds was still the UVB-centric SPF. UVA protections were guided, but not prominent, and the label didn't communicate strength beyond a checkmark. Meanwhile, outside the US, researchers kept iterating. In Europe and Japan, rating systems emerged that specifically spoke to UVA, PPD, and PA grades, eventually pressuring formulators to include robust UVA filters. Families of molecules like bisethylhexyloxyphenyl methoxyphenyl triazine and diethylamino hydroxybenzyl hexyl benzoate joined the party abroad. Their job was to mop up longer wavelengths the human nerve endings don't warn you about. Back in the States, the one-eyed number kept marching. Retailers trained shoppers with end caps. The higher, the better. The psychological effect was real. High numbers created risk compensation. People stayed longer, skipped reapplication, and forgot hats. A bottle solved the fear so they didn't have to. This was the moment everything changed, and didn't. When broad spectrum finally arrived on labels, it signaled that a product had met a threshold for UVA coverage. But thresholds aren't performance parity. A lotion could be SPF 50 for UVB and still only barely clear the UVA bar. Consumers assumed the big digit covered it all. Brands didn't correct them. Why would they? The number drove sales. The stakes were personal. For someone with hyperpigmentation, weak UVA coverage meant stubborn dark patches that never faded. For outdoor workers, cumulative UVA exposure under clouds and through windshields quietly aged one side of the face faster than the other. Dermatologists saw the asymmetry in exam rooms. The public saw a tan that didn't sting. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The number doesn't lie about what it measures. It's just half the story. And when you base a national sunscreen culture on half the story, you get what we have. Millions of people buying math that prevents a burn today while letting tomorrow's damage through. To understand who tried to fix the blind spot first and why American shelves still lag, we need to leave the beach and step into two different regulatory worlds. One chose speed and new filters. One chose caution and a label that stayed loud about the wrong thing. The UVA problem. The rays you don't feel. To see why the big number misleads, we have to meet the part of sunlight you don't feel. UVB is the match that burns. UVA is the quiet floodlight. It makes up the vast majority of UV that reaches you, slides deeper into the dermis, and doesn't announce itself with sting. No alarm, no pink, no short-term feedback loop. Just slow cellular stress that shows up years later as lines, spots, and in some cases, cancer. Here's the human version. A truck driver in his 60s walks into a dermatologist's office. One side of his face looks 10 years older, leathery, mottled, creased. The other side, the one away from the window, looks younger. He never felt a burn behind glass, but UVA had been clocking hours through that windshield for decades. Glass knocks down UVB. UVA gets through quietly. What's happening under the hood is messy and relentless. UVA's longer wavelengths bypass the epidermis's early warning system and dump energy into the dermis. There, it stirs up reactive oxygen species that nick collagen, break elastin's recoil, and interfere with the enzymes that keep your skin architecture tidy. It also creates indirect DNA damage. Instead of a single, obvious mutation event, you get oxidative chaos and repair errors that add up. It doesn't look dramatic in a day. It compounds across summers, commutes, and office windows. Clouds don't help much. The light outside goes gray, the temperature drops, you feel safe, UVA barely notices. It penetrates haze, bounces around, and still lands. That's why dermatologists talk about daily sunscreen like brushing your teeth. Not because you're planning a beach day, but because Tuesday has windows. Office glass, car glass, airplane windows, UVA likes them all. If your protection strategy starts when you feel heat, you're starting late. So what does broad spectrum really mean? In the US, it means a product meets a minimum requirement that its UVA protection reaches a certain fraction of its UVB protection. It's a bar, not a grade. Hit it and you get to print the badge. Miss it and you don't. But here's the catch. That threshold doesn't climb in lockstep with the giant SPF on the front. A high SPF product can legally carry modest UVA coverage and still say broad spectrum. The label doesn't tell you how strong that UVA shield actually is. That's the false comfort problem. You buy SPF 70, wear it carefully, and notice you're not burning. So you stay. You don't reapply on time. You trust the number. Meanwhile, the UVA portion of the formula might be working at a lower ceiling than you think, especially if the brand leaned on UVB-strong filters to win that big digit. The result? Low pain now, higher dose of the quiet stuff later. If you've shopped abroad, you've seen a different story on the label. In Japan and Korea, a PA system, plus signs, speaks specifically to UVA performance. Europe often uses PPD numbers or UVA circles to show a defined ratio and a minimum. Those systems push manufacturers to prove and display real UVA heft. In practice, that alignment of test and label changed what people bought and how they used it. Elegant textures helped, but so did knowing a product was PA++++ instead of just broad spectrum. Texture matters more than we admit. Strong UVA filters can be oily or heavy if the chemistry is old. People skip heavy products, they underapply. They forget the midday re-up because the film feels smothering. Modern UVA filters abroad let formulators build thinner, more stable films that people actually enjoy. Compliance isn't a moral issue, it's a friction problem. The easier it feels, the more you use it, the safer you are. There's another quirk. UVA breaks some filters down. Avobenzone, a common US UVA absorber, needs stabilizers or it photodegrades. Good formulas pair it with helpers, but not all do that well. Mineral zinc oxide is a true broad-spectrum workhorse, but at useful loads, it can leave a cast that keeps people from using enough. These trade-offs live in the gap between what a label promises and what daily life delivers. And then there's hyperpigmentation. For darker skin tones or anyone managing melasma or post-inflammatory marks, UVA is a relentless aggravator. You might never burn, so SPF feels irrelevant. But UVA stirs melanocytes and locks in contrast you're trying to fade. That's why dermatologists tell patients with pigment concerns to chase high UVA ratings, hats, and shade like their routine depends on it, because it does. Let's bring this back to the kitchen counter. You've got two bottles. One screams SPF 60 with broad spectrum in small print. The other from abroad says SPF 50 PA++++. The first could be fine. It could also be UVB heavy with bare minimum UVA coverage. The second is telling you its UVA armor is robust. Without that clarity, American shoppers are guessing. Many guess wrong. The stakes aren't theoretical. Skin cancers show up most where life puts light: faces, ears, necks, forearms. UVA is there every overcast commute, every corner desk. When the standard teaches you to celebrate a number you can feel while sidelining a wavelength you can't, you get more hours outside, less reapplication, and a quiet ledger of damage adding up. We can fix this. Labels that grade UVA plainly help. Formulas people like help more, but step one is seeing the problem. The rays you don't feel are the ones you live in. And once you see them, the rest of the story, how different regions responded, makes sense. Two worlds of sunscreen. US versus the EU and Asia. While that was happening in American bathrooms, bigger numbers, small UVA promises, something different was taking shape in Paris labs and Tokyo pharmacies. Walk into a European drugstore and the shelf reads like a chemistry upgrade. More filters to choose from, more ways to block the long wavelengths we actually live in, and formulas that feel like skincare, not paste. Here's the split in plain terms. The US has a limited roster of UV filters, roughly a dozen and change you actually see, most of them older. Europe and parts of Asia approve 30+ options, including modern UVA specialists. That broader toolkit lets formulators build protection like a balanced diet, not a two-food menu. If you want strong coverage beyond 370 nanometers, they've got molecules designed for it. If you want stability under brutal sun, they've got workhorses that don't fall apart at noon. Names matter here because they changed behavior. Abroad, you'll see filters like Tinosorb S and Tinosorb M, bisethylhexyloxyphenyl methoxyphenyl triazine, and its hybrid particulate cousin. They absorb a wide swath and don't quit quickly. Uvinol A+, diethylamino hydroxybenzyl hexylbenzoate, was built to catch deep UVA with good photo stability. Add Mexoryl SX and Mexoryl 400, tuned to the far end of UVA, and you start closing the gap the human eye can't sense. Those aren't buzzwords. They're the tools that make a label's UVA claims hold up on real skin day after day. Meanwhile, in the US, formulators often lean on avobenzone for UVA, then prop it up so it doesn't crumble under light, while piling on UVB-strong filters to hit high SPF. Zinc oxide can cover both sides, but at levels that really matter, it can leave a cast many people won't tolerate. That's the quiet compliance penalty. If a product looks chalky or feels greasy, people underapply or skip the second coat. Elegant chemistry isn't about luxury. It's about getting the right dose on faces that would otherwise resist it. Why did the shelves diverge? The rulebook. America treats sunscreen as an over-the-counter drug, which puts every active ingredient through a slow, formal gauntlet. Europe and much of Asia regulate sunscreen as cosmetics, different frameworks, different speeds. In the US, the 1999 monograph defined the sandbox, and for years it barely expanded. Abroad, regulators allowed newer molecules with solid dossiers, and formulators iterated. You can hear the groan in American labs. They know the filters. They just can't use them here without a long fight. What nobody knew in those early years was how much texture would decide outcomes. A thin, fast-setting milk with modern filters vanishes on the skin. People use enough and they reapply because it feels fine under makeup or sweat. A thick, draggy cream with older actives may protect on paper, but if you spread half the dose because it pills or shines, your real-world shield is weak. That's why European lunch crowds apply a nickel-sized puddle without flinching, and why Korean commuters pat PA+++ gels like moisturizer. It's not discipline, it's friction reduced. There's a second, subtler difference. Labeling that speaks to UVA. European products often include a UVA logo indicating a defined ratio to SPF, and many list PPD values that approximate how much UVA gets through. Japanese and Korean labels use PA grades, pluses that track increasing UVA performance. That language trains shoppers to think beyond the front number and pick formulas with proven depth. In the US, broad spectrum is a binary gate. You pass or you don't. It doesn't push formulas to keep climbing with the SPF claim. So a bottle can tout 70 on the front and offer only modest UVA robustness, and the shopper has no way to see it. Here's a micro story from a Paris pharmacy. A mother asks for something for melasma. The pharmacist pulls a lightweight fluid, SPF 50 with a high PPD and long UVA coverage, tells her it won't ghost on darker skin, and shows her the two-finger line for daily use. She leaves with a plan she'll actually follow. Across the Atlantic, a similar mother scans a US aisle, finds broad-spectrum SPF 70, worries about white cast, and buys a tinted moisturizer with SPF 20 because it looks nicer under makeup. One system nudges toward adherence, the other nudges toward compromise. Unknown to most shoppers, those modern filters abroad also simplify formulation math. When your active doesn't photodegrade fast, you need fewer stabilizers, which can mean fewer irritants and less weight. When a filter targets the tail of UVA, you don't have to overload a UVB workhorse to compensate. The result? Thinner films that still hold up on a long run, fewer stinging eyes, less fragrance needed to mask heavy bases. That's compliance again, but engineered. The irony is hard to miss. American dermatologists spend clinic time coaching patients around a label that doesn't show them the metric that matters, while European and Asian shelves quietly teach it at the point of sale. It isn't that the US can't make good sunscreen. It's that the rulebook and the chemistry toolkit make it harder to build great ones people love. Everything was about to change when the gatekeepers were forced to revisit their standards. But before that door budged, cracks had already appeared in the American story. Contamination scares, absorption questions, and a market trained to chase the biggest number on the shelf. The regulatory stall. Why the FDA moves like wet cement. While European shelves filled with new filters, the American gate stayed heavy. Here, SY. In the US, sunscreen isn't just skincare, it's an over-the-counter drug. That means every active filter lives inside a formal rulebook called a monograph. In 1999, the FDA published its sunscreen monograph and, in effect, froze the playbook. If your formula used the listed actives at approved concentrations and passed required tests, you could sell it without filing a full new drug application. If you wanted a new filter, different story. You'd be asking to expand the monograph or go the prescription route, neither fast. The system was built for caution. You establish what's generally recognized as safe and effective, then you hold the line. But the line didn't move. Throughout the 2000s, industry groups petitioned for modern filters used abroad. The queue grew. The FDA, stung by unrelated drug safety scandals, slowed further, demanding more data on chronic exposure, phototoxicity, and systemic absorption. In 2014, Congress tried to pry the door open with the Sunscreen Innovation Act, setting timelines for FDA decisions on new actives. The deadlines came and went. The agency asked for more safety evidence. Meanwhile, the 1999 framework stayed the daily reality on store shelves. Inside the bureaucracy, there was a logic to the pace. Unlike cosmetics, OTC drugs are judged against a higher bar. The FDA wanted to see what long-term daily whole-body application meant in real people, not just in Petri dishes. Then the agency ran its own maximum usage trials and found what formulators suspected. Several common U.S. filters hit measurable levels in blood under heavy use. The FDA didn't say, "Stop using sunscreen." It said, in essence, "Prove this level of exposure is safe." That's not a ban. It's a homework assignment that takes years, and it applied retroactively to older filters too. Industry had mixed incentives. The incumbents already had a menu of approved actives and profitable products. A new UVA superstar from Europe might force reformulation, new stability data, new packaging, and price pressure. If the rules stayed familiar, margins stayed safe. Lobbyists argued for clarity and speed. They didn't always push for upheaval. Consumers, trained by marketing to chase the biggest SPF, didn't know what they were missing. The market could grow without the toolkit evolving. There's another wrinkle: how labels were modernized. Broad spectrum eventually arrived as a binary pass-fail tied to a UVA to UVB ratio, and water resistance claims got time limits. But the front-of-pack story never required a plain UVA rating. Without that metric, there was little regulatory pressure for UVA protection to climb in lockstep with rising SPF claim. Brands could keep leaning on UVB-strong filters to win the big number, satisfy the minimal UVA bar, and hit the shelf with 70 or 100 in bold. On paper, reforms kept coming. The CARES Act in 2020 overhauled the old monograph rulemaking into an administrative order process meant to be faster. In practice, the FDA also proposed tightening safety determinations. Of the 16 U.S.-listed actives, only zinc oxide and titanium dioxide were clearly GRASE. Others needed more data. That's a careful position, but it landed like a freeze frame. If the old filters needed homework and new filters needed doors opened, formulators were trapped between a past that wasn't fully settled and a future that wasn't yet allowed. Meanwhile, abroad, post-market surveillance and cosmetic regulation let regulators update guidance without locking every active into a separate drug channel. That doesn't mean lax. Europe bans ingredients quickly when risk is clear. It does mean faster incorporation of modern UVA chemistry. American dermatologists watch their patients import tubes, compare textures on forums, and ask why their favorite PA++++ gel wasn't legally sold stateside. The answer was never simple. Different laws, different thresholds, different risk calculus. Here's a micro-story from a New Jersey lab bench. A formulator runs 2 prototypes. Version A, avobenzone stabilized within the US playbook, high-SPF passable feel. Version B, a modern UVA filter stack they can't legally market here without a new order. In blind panels, people prefer B. It spreads faster, stings less, and holds up in sweat. The team tags it EU only, ships samples to partners overseas, and spends the afternoon rewriting version A to be less greasy. The science exists. The gate is the constraint. All of this had a human cost you couldn't feel day one. American shoppers conflated drug-level regulation with best-in-class protection, then bought on a number that favored UVB. Outdoor workers trusted a system that didn't speak plainly about UVA strength. People with deeper skin tones, already hesitant about white cast, were offered thicker mineral creams or older chemical blends, many underapplied. The stall wasn't just bureaucratic. It was behavioral, retail, cultural. While the cement slowly set, warning signs bubbled up, absorption data, benzene recalls, label over claims. These didn't prove sunscreen was dangerous. They proved the system needed agility and oversight. But agility requires a gate that can swing. And as long as the rulebook favored yesterday's actives, the market kept selling big digits to cover a gap the label wouldn't name. The chemical question: what's getting into your blood? While the gate stayed closed, something unsettling surfaced in the lab. Under heavy, real-world use, some common U.S. sunscreen filters don't just sit on your skin, they show up in blood tests. This isn't rumor. In 2019 and 2020, FDA-sponsored maximum usage trials measured plasma levels after people applied sunscreen across much of their bodies several times a day, as labels recommend. The results were clear. Avobenzone, oxybenzone, octocrylene, homosalate, octizalate, and octinoxate all crossed the agency's 0.5 ng/ml threshold that triggers a request for more safety data. Stakes first, because this is where people panic. Finding a chemical in blood isn't the same as proving harm. The FDA didn't tell anyone to stop using sunscreen. They said, at these exposure levels, we want toxicology answers we don't fully have on endocrine activity, on chronic exposure, on vulnerable groups. That's a homework list, not a verdict. Dermatologists still recommend daily sunscreen because the risk of UV damage is certain. But the fact that these molecules get in means we should demand formulas and filters with better safety dossiers, not shrug what actually happened in those studies. Volunteers were assigned lotions, creams, or sprays and applied the standard dose to most of their bodies on day one, then reapplied at regular intervals for several days. Blood samples taken over time showed geometric mean concentrations of several actives well above that 0.5 ng/ml signal. Oxybenzone spiked the highest. Avobenzone and octocrylene were lower but measurable. Homosalate and octizalate also crossed the bar. The takeaway wasn't toxic, it was systemic. And once an ingredient is systemic, regulators ask, what does long-term, low-level exposure do? Does it matter for teens, for pregnancy, for thyroid function? Those are fair questions. Meanwhile, separate from human pharmacokinetics, there's a reef story that blurred lines. Hawaii moved to restrict oxybenzone and octinoxate over coral toxicity concerns. In lab and field studies, those compounds at certain concentrations can stress corals. Whether typical beach water levels match those lab doses is debated, and coral bleaching is overwhelmingly driven by warming seas, not just sunscreen runoff. But for consumers, reef safe labels turned into shorthand for safe for me, which isn't what those laws claim. Ecology and human toxicology are different lanes, both deserve precision. Here's the human angle you can feel. A runner, loyal to a favorite spray, avoids creams because they drip into her eyes. She reapplies between intervals, breathes a little aerosol, and trusts the can. On paper, it's the right habit. In practice, those sprays can deliver inconsistent layers. Some propellants have raised separate concerns, and now we know the dissolved actives can make it into circulation under maximal use. The fix isn't fear. It's choosing formats that lay down even films. Lotions, gels, sticks, and filters with cleaner absorption profiles when you can. Let's separate signal from noise on endocrine disruption. Oxybenzone has the most data. Some in vitro and animal studies show receptor activity at certain concentrations. Those systems don't map neatly to human everyday exposure. Human studies are mixed and often confounded. Headlines collapse uncertainty into certainty. The right line is simpler. Oxybenzone is effective and common. It's also the prime candidate for careful, modern risk assessment. If you'd rather skip the debate, you can. Zinc oxide covers broadly without meaningful systemic absorption. Abroad, UVA-forward filters like Uvinol A+ and Tinosorb S have strong photostability and in post-market surveillance haven't raised red flags at scale. Access matters. Octocrylene carries a different shadow, stability over time. Some batches can accumulate benzophenone, a degradation impurity as products age. That's a manufacturing and storage story, not an inevitable property of the molecule in your skin, but it's another reason independent testing and fresher stock matter. Homosalate has been flagged in European assessments for tighter concentration limits pending more data. Again, not a ban on use, an adjustment to margins of safety. So what does absorption mean for your face at 8 a.m.? 3 practical shifts. First, if you're in the US and want to minimize the systemic piece, favor mineral zinc oxide for daily wear, especially around eyes, or pick well-formulated blends that avoid the handful of filters under the heaviest scrutiny. Second, use lotions or creams over aerosols for reliable coverage and less inhalation, and stick to brands with transparent testing. Third, think beyond sunscreen. Hats, UPF clothing, and shade reduce the dose you need from a bottle, period. Unknown to most shoppers, the FDA's absorption findings also slow the regulatory gears. When older actives require new toxicology packages, resources shift to proving yesterday's safe instead of approving tomorrow's filters. That's how a safety-first posture can paradoxically keep Americans tied to legacy chemistry with more open questions than some modern alternatives. The solution isn't to loosen safety. It's to leverage global data and move faster on proven UVA performance. In the end, the blood question isn't a plot twist that says sunscreen is bad. It's a reminder that labels and chemistry have to earn trust daily. Sunscreen prevents cancer. It also deserves the same scrutiny you'd want for anything you use every morning. The next cracks we'll see aren't in molecules. They're in manufacturing and labels, what's in the can, and whether it does what it says. Recalls, failures, and surprises in your bottle. While the absorption debates played out in journals, something simpler and scarier hit store shelves, cans and tubes that didn't match their own labels. In 2021, a private lab screened hundreds of personal care aerosols and found benzene, a known carcinogen, in dozens of spray sunscreens across multiple big-name brands. Parents pulled cans from beach bags. Retailers yanked pallets. Companies issued recalls and statements about suppliers and propellant. Nobody had added benzene on purpose. It slipped in through contaminated raw materials or formed in production. But for shoppers, the nuance didn't matter. The promise of safety had sprung a leak. Stakes first, benzene isn't a theoretical hazard. Chronic inhalation exposure is linked to blood disorders. The levels detected varied and risk depends on dose and duration, but the lesson was blunt. When you aerosolize protection, you inhale whatever else is in the can. A sunscreen meant for your skin had just added a lung question. That's not the trade anyone signed up for. Action looked chaotic because it was. Pharmacies taped "do not sell" to shelves. Customer service lines filled with beach trip timelines and batch codes. Brand teams traced lots upstream, audited propellant suppliers, and reformulated. Some even paused entire aerosol lines. Meanwhile, dermatologists tried to thread the needle. Keep using sunscreen, but if you have a recalled spray, stop. Prefer lotions or sticks. If you must use sprays, spray into your hands and apply to skin, not into the air and never near the face. The impact lingered. Aerosols had been the compliance hero, fast, sandy hands, squirming kids. After the recalls, that convenience came with a warning label in people's heads. Sales bent toward lotions. A teachable moment formed. Reliable films beat convenience fog. Label versus reality problems weren't just in propellants. Independent testing in several countries routinely found products that underperformed their labeled SPF when applied at realistic doses or even at the lab standard. Sometimes a formula tested SPF 30 in-house and 18 elsewhere. Ocean, sweat, rub-off, and user under application stacked the odds, but some discrepancies suggested inconsistent quality control or testing shortcut. A number on a bottle is only as honest as the protocol behind it. Sprays add another trap, coverage illusions. A mist feels thorough because skin feels wet, but wind steals half the plume. A pass looks like paint, it's not. The standard dose 2 milligrams per square centimeter is far more than 2 glancing clouds per arm, and inhalation isn't just about benzene scares. Repeatedly breathing any fine mist of solvents and actives isn't ideal, especially for children. The fix isn't fear, it's technique. Spray into your palm and spread, or skip sprays entirely when you can. Water resistance myths also crumble in heat. 80 minutes doesn't mean invincible for an hour and 20. It means after that swim time, your tested protection starts falling off a cliff. Add towel rub, sand abrasion, and sunscreen dissolving into sweat, and your midday run eats the margin faster than the label implies. Here's a micro story. Jason trained for a half marathon through July. He slathered a sport spray across chest and arms, did a quick face mist to avoid sting, and hit the course. Mile 1 felt fine. By mile 8, salt and friction had carved paths through his film. The finish line photo shows a cleanly roasted V where his singlet didn't quite sit still. He'd trusted water-resistant like a force field. Heat and motion rewrote the contract. Then came the octocrylene surprise. Reports that benzophenone, a degradation impurity, could accumulate in some octocrylene-based sunscreens as they aged. That's a chemistry and storage story, not a smoking gun for daily users, but it added a quiet checklist. Check expiration dates, avoid buying old stock, don't leave bottles in hot cars. Small habits close big loophole. All these cracks, benzene, underperforming labels, spray pitfalls, time limit misunderstandings, didn't make sunscreen the villain. They revealed where the system assumes ideal behavior and where real life disagrees. Good news lives here too. Lotions and gels from reputable brands routinely meet or exceed claims. Stick formats reduce inhalation and help with precision. Water resistance claims, used correctly, help plan reapplication. And independent labs, consumer watchdogs, and even pharmacy chains now pressure test offerings and publish results. Quietly, transparency is improving. Meanwhile, the market kept growing and the shelf numbers climbed. Bigger digits still move units, but the people who got burned, literally and figuratively, started reading fine print. They found batch codes and recall lists. They learned to favor pumps over propellants, fresh stock over dusty caps, and brands that share testing methods. The lesson stuck. Protection isn't just chemistry, it's manufacturing, labeling, and how you put it on. While that was happening in stores, marketing had another trick. Push SPF ever higher, let UVA limp along, and watch confidence rise. That's the high SPF trap, the next piece of the story. The high SPF trap. Why 100 feels safe and isn't. The arms race to triple digits looks like progress. It feels like progress. But the math behind SPF turns that feeling into a trap. Here's the simple version. SPF is a shield against UVB, not a clock. The jump from 30 to 50 sounds huge. In filtering terms, it's small. SPF 30 blocks about 97% of UVB, SPF 50 about 98%, SPF 100 about 99%. Those extra percentage points look heroic on a label. In real life, they can be erased by sweat, a missed patch, or a late reapplication. Stakes first, high numbers change behavior. When people feel maxed out, they stay outside longer, skip the 2-hour reapply, and rely on the bottle to outlast sun, water, and time. That's risk compensation, the same phenomenon that makes drivers go faster with new tires. Less sting today becomes more total dose tomorrow. And because most high SPF formulas lean on UVB-heavy filters to win those digits, the UVA side can lag. You don't burn, so you trust the product. Meanwhile, UVA clocks hours on your dermis. What actually happens on skin? A film that looks perfect in a lab falls apart on a body. A child rubs sand off an arm. A sleeve grazes a shoulder. A wave takes the edge off a shoulder blade. With SPF 100, tiny holes in coverage matter more because the formula's promise sits on a razor's edge, the last 1 or 2%. Lose a bit of film and that margin falls back to the same territory as SPF 30 or 50, sometimes worse if you underapplied in the first place. The illusion of 100 masks how fragile that last sliver of protection is. Impact: people with sensitive or fair skin or on photosensitizing meds are told to buy the highest number available. Many do, then they trust it too much. The result is longer sessions, late reapplication, and a bigger UVA bill. Meanwhile, the marketing ladder keeps climbing, 50, 70, 100, because the shelf rewards big digits. A higher number doesn't demand a higher UVA rating in the US. So brands can keep racing vertically on UVB while the invisible rays get a modest net. Here's a kitchen counter micro story. Nadia buys SPF 100 for a theme park day. She applies once at 9 a.m. carefully over makeup. By noon, the Florida sun, sweat, and a backpack strap have carved gaps she can't see. She feels fine, no burn sting, and decides to skip the reapply line at 1 p.m. because it's 100. That night, the mirror shows a crisp strap outline and fresh freckles. The number didn't fail. The behavior did because the number encouraged it. There's also the stability trade-off. To hit extreme SPF, formulators often crank UVB filters to high loads. That can make films thicker, oilier, or more likely to sting eyes, nudging users to apply less than the tested dose. Less product means a protection cliff, regardless of what the label says. Some high SPF blends also rely on complex stabilizer systems to keep avobenzone from photo-degrading. If those helpers underperform, UVA protection slides quietly during the very hours you feel safe. So what's smarter than chasing 100? Aim for proven broad spectrum with balanced UVA performance and a texture you'll use enough of. SPF 30/50, applied at the right dose and reapplied on schedule, often beats a single careful coat of 100 stretched across the day. Abroad, shoppers use UVA grades like PA++++ or PPD numbers to pick formulas that carry weight where it counts. In the US, you can read ingredient lists. Zinc oxide is a reliable broad-spectrum anchor, and favor brands that publish independent testing or UVA metrics when they have them. Technique beats digits. 2 finger lengths for the face and neck. A shot glass for the body. Reapply every 2 hours, sooner if you're sweating or swimming. Prefer lotions and gels for even films. Use sticks for edges and noses. Spray into hands if you must, then spread. Pair sunscreen with hats, UPF shirts, and shade, which remove pressure from the bottle and make 30 behave like infinite on the covered parts. The trap is that high SPF is bad. It's that a giant number hijacks your instincts. If the label won't grade UVA or hold your hand through dose and reapplication, you have to outsmart it. Pick balance over bravado, texture over hype, and routine over one heroic coat. The digits don't keep you safe. Your habits do. And the best habits start with formulas designed to protect what you can't feel, not just what you can. The filters that work. Better options without the hype. To get out of the number trap, start with filters that actually cover the light you live in. One workhorse has been in front of us all along, zinc oxide. It's mineral, meaning it sits on skin and scatters and absorbs across a wide band, UVB and deep into UVA. It's inherently photostable, so it doesn't fade under sun, and it doesn't need a stabilizer buddy to keep working. That's why pediatricians lean on it for infants and why dermatologists trust it around eyes. Its flaw is visible. At meaningful percentages, it can leave a cast, especially on deeper skin. Modern formulas use smaller particles, better dispersion, and tints to hide it, but texture still determines whether you'll use enough. Titanium dioxide often shows up next to zinc. It's great for UVB and part of UVA, but it falls off at the long wave end, the very range that ages skin and worsens melasma. If you're relying on titanium alone, you're leaving a gap. In US products, the most reliable mineral broad-spectrum protection comes from zinc as the anchor. Titanium can help with feel and boost UVB, but it isn't your UVA closer. Abroad, chemistry widened the lane. Filters like Tinosorb S and Tinosorb M changed the game. Tinosorb S is an oil-soluble absorber that spans UVB and UVA with strong photostability, less breakdown, steadier coverage. Tinosorb M is a hybrid particle that both absorbs and scatters, acting a bit like a mineral with chemical versatility. Uvinol A+ is the long UVA specialist Americans keep asking for. It targets the wavelengths that slip through windshields and cloud cover. Mexoryl 400, a newer entrant in Europe, reaches into the far end of UVA where older actives struggle. Stack these, and you can build thin, transparent films with real UVA heft. Here, that's why that matters in human terms. If you're managing melasma or post-acne marks, you need aggressive long UVA control daily, not just at the beach. A formula with zinc oxide at solid percentages does that. So does a European or Asian blend leaning on Uvinol A+ or Tinosorb S with a PPD or PA rating to prove it. For runners and outdoor workers, photostability is sanity. Filters that don't decay mid-shift mean you're not gambling on the second hour. What about safety? Set the headlines aside and ask 2 questions. Is the filter photostable, and what does post-market surveillance say? Zinc oxide checks both. The modern EU-Asia filters above have years of use data and, crucially, let formulators avoid loading up on older UVB-centric actives to hit high SPF. That balance reduces eye sting, improves feel, and lifts adherence. If a formula stings less, you don't avoid the orbital area. If it vanishes under makeup, you don't skimp on the dose. Combination strategies are where this gets good. In markets that allow it, pairing zinc oxide with modern chemical UVA filters covers the spectrum like a well-set net. Zinc for breadth, Tinosorb/Uvinol/Mexoryl for long UVA reinforcement and stability, lighter textures for reapplication. That's not theoretical. It's the difference between a morning layer you forget you're wearing and a mask you fight all day. In the US, you can still win. Look for high-percentage zinc oxide lotions or fluids that list 15–20% zinc oxide without huge amounts of titanium trying to carry UVA. Tinted mineral formulas help deeper tones by canceling cast with iron oxides, which also attenuate visible light that aggravates pigmentation. If you prefer chemical blends, scan for avobenzone stabilized with octocrylene or newer photostabilizers, plus a solid UVB backbone. And prioritize brands that publish independent UVA testing or PFA PPD data, even if it's not on the bottle. Nanoparticles get questions. The current weight of evidence says zinc oxide and titanium dioxide nanoparticles in sunscreens don't penetrate intact skin to a biologically relevant degree. They sit on the surface or in the outermost layer and wash off. Inhalation is the concern, which is another reason to favor lotions, sticks, and gels over aerosols. On skin, nano-sized minerals help transparency without changing the basic safety story. Here's a quick human moment. Priya, Fitzpatrick IV, stopped using sunscreen because every mineral she tried made her look gray in meetings. Her dermatologist switched her to a tinted zinc oxide fluid that used iron oxides and better dispersion. She went from a pea-sized dab to the full 2-finger dose because she no longer dreaded the mirror. 3 months later, her melasma was calmer, not because the number changed, but because the filter and texture did. Daily wear reality beats ingredient lists on paper. The best sunscreen is the one you'll put on enough of early and often. Elegant filters make that choice easy. Heavy films make perfect habits impossible. If you're shopping abroad, seek SPF 50 with PA++++ or a high PPD and those modern filter names. If you're stateside, anchor with zinc oxide, choose textures you enjoy, and use tint when it helps. Filters are half the story. The other half is how you put them on. And that's where technique quietly outperforms hype. Application truths. Technique beats hype. Filters matter, but the way you put them on decides the ending. Most people wear half the tested dose and then wonder why the sun still wins. Here's the simple rule that changes everything. Measure, don't guess. For face and neck, draw 2 clean lines of product from the base to the tip of your index and middle finger. That's your dose. For your body, think in ounces. A shot glass amount, about 30 milliliters, for full coverage in a swimsuit. Kids need less by surface area, not by caution. Spread it until skin looks evenly sheened, not dotted. Timing kills or saves protection. Sunscreen needs a few minutes to form a uniform film. Put it on 15 minutes before you see sun, not at the first hot step off the porch. Reapply every 2 hours, sooner if you're sweating, swimming, or towel drying. Water-resistant 80 minutes isn't magic, it's a countdown while you're wet. If you're in and out of the ocean, treat every towel as a reset button. Dry off, recoat the areas that got rubbed, and start the clock again. Makeup complicates math. Moisturizers with SPF can work for indoor days, windows and all, but their SPF assumes the full dose. A thin dab under foundation rarely hits it. If you're layering, let skincare soak in, then apply your sunscreen at the measured amount, let it set, and use makeup on top. Powder SPF is a helpful top-up, not a base layer. Spray mists marketed as over-makeup SPF can help for quick touch-ups, but remember the spray trap. Mist into your hands and press on rather than fogging your face and eyes. Lotions beat sprays for reliability. Pumps and squeeze tubes lay down even films. Sticks are great for edges, ears, noses, hairlines, and for kids who hate creams. If you must use sprays, use them as liquid. Spray into your palm, then spread until every surface looks coated. Wind is a thief, don't feed it. Clothing buys you certainty. A wide brim hat blocks what your sunscreen misses at the hairline. Long-sleeve UPF shirts make reapply every 2 hours irrelevant from neck to wrist. Sunglasses with UV protection guard delicate lids and the periorbital skin where people underapply. Shade is a strategy, not an admission of failure. If you plan your day around less direct sun, you ask less of a bottle. That's not caution, it's leverage. Here's a tiny kitchen sink story. Maya worked by a south-facing office window. She never burned, so she skipped sunscreen on cloudy days. One spring, she noticed a faint line across her forearm where her sleeve ended, a soft tan that stopped at watch height. UVA had been tapping her through glass for months. She started a ritual, 2 fingers of a light zinc-tinted fluid every morning, quick hand wash, then a UPF sleeve for marathon inbox days. 6 weeks later, the line faded. Nothing heroic, just consistency. Application order matters less than dose and time, but small tricks help. Use the zones method. Face and neck first, then arms, then legs, then torso, finishing with backs of hands and behind knees, spots people forget. Speak it out loud with kids. Face, ears, neck, arms, hands, legs, feet. They'll learn the map faster than you think. If hairlines and part lines burn, run a stick along the part and around the ears. If you're bald or buzzed, treat your scalp like your face. Don't mix sunscreen into other products. Blend it with foundation or moisturizer and you change how the filters spread and the dose per area. Layer instead. If pilling is your enemy, let each layer settle, use less silicone-heavy primers, and choose sunscreens that play well under makeup. Fluids, gels, and milks are friendlier than occlusive creams. Sports and sweat demand choreography. Coat up at home. Pack a small, travel-sized lotion and a stick for the face. Reapply at water breaks, not at the top of the hour. Wipe salt from hot spots, cheeks, nose, shoulders, then recoat. If your eyes sting, try zinc around the orbital bone and keep chemical filters for the wider face. Finally, check your finish line. After you apply, look for dull gaps between fingers, along the jawline, behind ears, around straps. Sunscreen doesn't fail evenly, it fails in mis-slivers. Fill the slivers. The most protective product is the one that actually covers you in the amount that labs tested at the times your life rubs it away. Technique quietly turns decent formulas into real protection. The money machine. How $20 billion sells you a number. While you were learning two-finger lines and ditching sprays, the shelf was learning you. The sunscreen business doesn't need you to understand UVA. It needs you to reach for the bottle with the biggest digit and toss it in your cart without thinking. That's the business model. Sell confidence by the number. Start with margins. Legacy UVB filters are cheap. Reformulation with newer, more stable chemistry costs time, pilot runs, stability studies, packaging changes, and new marketing. If the label law doesn't force you to upgrade UVA, why would you spend to do it? You can pour your dollars into summer ad buys instead. Bright TV spots, influencer beach days, and giant end caps that say 100 in type you can read from a parking lot. Every June, the same play land. Shelf space is its own battlefield. Big retailers rent it by performance. A bottle that moves fast keeps its place. One that educates slowly loses the row. Big digits move fast. Add a neon cap, the word sport, and a promise like ultra, and you've got a mini billboard that wins in 3 seconds. No one lingers to decode UVA ratios when a toddler is yanking on their sleeve. The packaging knows this. It's designed for panic time decisions at the start of a heat wave. Behind the shelf, a quieter lever works. Promotions. Buy one, get one on High-SPF keeps inventory cycling and pushes shoppers to stock up. Stocking up sounds smart. It hides 2 problems. Products age and some actives degrade, especially in heat. That bargain twin pack might sit in a trunk all summer. Next June, it's a chemistry experiment with a heroic number on the front. Industry knows the psychology cold. If you fear burns, you chase SPF. If you hate cast or sting, you underapply. Risk compensation does the rest. So the marketing ladder climbs higher, SPF 70, 85, 100, because the label doesn't demand matching UVA strength and the consumer doesn't demand it either. The path of least resistance is paved with large numerals and tiny asterisks. Lobbying doesn't look like villainy, it looks like guidance. Trade groups argue for clarity and consistency in testing, usually meaning keep current rules stable. Stability helps incumbents, products already optimized for the existing UVA bar and UVB digits. Pushing for a visible UVA grade on the front would force a reckoning. Some bestsellers would look weaker and reformulation would become mandatory. That's expensive. So the ask is slower, softer change. Here's a micro story from a brand meeting in March. A product manager puts 2 mock-ups on the table. Both are SPF 50. One has a front-of-pack UVA grade from an internal test. The other keeps broad spectrum small. Research shows the UVA label confuses US shoppers and doesn't lift sales. The team picks the cleaner front. The UVA grade version becomes a claim on the website 3 clicks deep where no one goes. The money trail also winds through supply chains. Aerosol propellants are commodities. When costs spike, the temptation is to shave pennies, swap propellant suppliers, stretch raw materials, lean on equivalent sources. You don't intend to invite contamination, you invite risk variance. The benzene recalls weren't a strategy. They were a margin story colliding with quality control under speed. Meanwhile, private labels learned the playbook. Pharmacy chains built house brand SPF 50 and 70 lines that matched the big names on digits and undercut on price. The effect wasn't better products, it was price pressure that made reformulation even less attractive. When every budget bottle shouts 70, you don't differentiate with UVA data. You differentiate with color and feel, and even that is bounded by the old actives list. Endorsements add gloss. A seal from a cancer foundation or a dermatologist recommended tag comforts. Sometimes it reflects meaningful criteria. Sometimes it reflects participation in a program and a fee. Either way, the seal rarely requires high UVA performance beyond the existing US bar. The trust signal sells peace of mind more than it sells balanced protection. Retail psychology finishes the job. Summer islands pop up near checkout. Travel bins hold tiny tubes labeled 50+. Trial sizes mean lower friction to buy, higher friction to use enough. You feel prepared with a 1-ounce bottle that can't possibly cover a family for a day. The illusion of readiness is profitable. Reality, dose, frequency, UVA depth doesn't fit on a clip strip. All of this would be harmless if the number mapped to true safety. It doesn't. The market discovered it can grow by selling what you can feel, no burn, while under-delivering on what you can't, UVA. The result is a machine that rewards the wrong metric and punishes nuance. Companies that try to educate pay a tax in slower turns. Companies that play the digit game get rewarded with reorders. So how do you beat a shelf that's trained to win your glance? You change what you look for. You reward balance with your wallet. And you use a checklist the market didn't write, one that turns the number into a footnote, not the headline. That's the playbook next. How to outsmart the label. A practical playbook. The shelf won't help you, so here's how you help yourself. Start with intent. Are you protecting for daily life or for long, sweaty, sun-soaked hours? For daily indoor-outdoor drift, commutes, windows, errands, pick a formula you'll wear every morning without thinking. For long exposure, beach, runs, hikes, prioritize durability and reapplication logistics. Look beyond the front number. In markets where it's legal, chase explicit UVA metrics, PA ratings, aim for PA++++, PPD values in the high teens or 20s, or the European UVA circle indicating at least 1/3 of SPF in UVA. Those marks force formulas to carry real UVA heft, not just a UVB megaphone. In the US, where labels stay quiet, read the active box. Zinc oxide is your broad-spectrum anchor. Look for meaningful percentages, often 15% or higher in elegant fluids or tints. Titanium dioxide can help feel but doesn't close long UVA alone. For chemical blends, avobenzone is the common UVA absorber. It needs stabilizers. Better formulas pair it with octocrylene or other photostabilizers. And avoid leaning entirely on UVB-heavy filters just to punch up SPF. Prefer lotions, fluids, and sticks over aerosols. Lotions lay even films. Sticks help edges, noses, and ears. Gels slide under makeup without pilling. If you must use a spray, use it as liquid. Spray into your hands, then spread until skin looks uniformly sheened. Wind steals coverage, don't feed it. And stick with fresh stock. Check expiration dates and skip heat-baked bottles from last summer's trunk. For pigment-prone skin, seek tinted mineral formulas with iron oxides. They help attenuate visible light that stirs melanocytes. For sensitive or eye-sting-prone users, zinc based around the orbital bone is a calm default. Use a comfortable chemical or hybrid on the wider face if you prefer that feel. For deeper tones, prioritize sheer zinc fluids or modern hybrids that disappear. If you hate the look, you won't use enough. Build a routine that measures, not guesses. Face and neck, 2 clean finger-length lines. Body, roughly a shot glass for full skin days. Apply 15 minutes before exposure. Reapply every 2 hours, sooner with sweat, swim, or towels. Pack a travel-size lotion and a stick. Recoat at water breaks, not later. Treat every towel as a reset. Make makeup work for you, not against you. Moisturizers with SPF can be fine for indoor days, but only at full dose. Dab and go won't cut it. Lay sunscreen first at the right amount, let it set, then makeup. For midday touch-ups, press a sunscreen stick over high points and along straps, or use a cushioned compact SPF in markets that offer high PA. Powders are top-ups, not base layers. Buy formats that match your day. Runners, choose photostable, sweat-friendly lotions that don't sting and keep a stick in a pocket for mid-root edges. Beach days, coat up at home, reapply on the hour, and use UPF shirts to turn infinite on covered areas. Office days, a light zinc tint every morning, hand wash, then add a sun sleeve if you live by a window. Use independent resources. In countries with consumer testing groups and pharmacy chains publishing results, scan their reports for products that meet or exceed labeled SPF and show documented UVA strength. Dermatology clinics, not influencer halls, tend to share brands that survive sweaty trials with kids and athletes. If you import EU Asian products where legal, stick to reputable pharmacies and authorized sellers to avoid counterfeits. And remember, foreign PA PPD on the label is worth the extra clicks. Create a mental checklist at the mirror. Map the missed zones, hairline, ears, behind ears, eyelids. Use mineral here, under straps, tops of feet, between fingers. Say it out loud with kids, face, ears, neck, arms, hands, legs, feet to train the habit. Look for dull gaps and fill them. Sunscreen fails in slivers before it fails in slabs. Don't mix sunscreen into other products. Mixing dilutes filters and breaks their film. Layer instead and give each layer a minute to settle. If pilling happens, lighten silicones in primers, try gel milks, and apply in thin passes to reach the total dose. Reduce how much you need from a bottle. Hats with real brims, sunglasses, shade at midday, and UPF clothing remove the pressure to be perfect. You'll reapply less in those zones because you don't have to. That's not anti-sunscreen. It's smart allocation. Finally, pick a default and automate it. Place your daily sunscreen by your toothbrush. Keep a spare in your bag and car. Replace seasonal sprays with a pump bottle you trust. Set a 2-hour timer on beach days. When the shelf sells confidence, your counter sells consistency. The label can't save you, your routine can. Human stakes. Real people, real consequences. Start with a waiting room on a Tuesday. A landscaper in his 40s rolls his sleeve to show a scab that never heals on the top of his forearm. He's tough, he shrugs off pain. The derm doesn't. It's a basal cell carcinoma, common, slow-growing, easy to miss until it is. 10 minutes with a curette and cautery clears it today. In 5 years, the tally might be dozens. Not fatal most of the time. Always disruptive, always preventable earlier. Across the hall, a teacher sits with a bandage on her calf where a biopsy just came back melanoma in situ, caught before it dove deeper. She didn't sunbathe. She walked her dog, wore capris, and trusted cloudy mornings. UVA kept showing up, she didn't feel it. A narrow excision solves it now, but the conversation changes. Mole maps, routine checks, a new habit at 7 a.m. Cancers don't look like movie scenes. Squamous cell on the ear cheats under a baseball cap brim. Basal cell on the nose erodes quietly along glasses lines. Melanoma, the one everyone fears, hides in a freckle you've stopped seeing. The risk climbs with hours, not just beach days. Driving routes, job sites, porch coffees. UVA adds to UVB year after year, whether you're fair or deep toned. Then there's photoaging, which people only take seriously when it's already there. A nurse in her 30s shows melasma across her cheeks, a map that got darker during a summer commute. She never burned, so SPF felt optional. UVA stirred melanocytes in the shade of her visor and through windshield glass. Treating it now means strict UVA control, hats, tinted mineral sunscreen, and patience. Every lapse sets the clock back. Outdoor workers carry a heavier bill. Roofers, line cooks at windowed stations, lifeguards, delivery drivers, jobs that don't pause at noon. They don't have time to reapply perfectly, and many hate greasy films that collect dust and sweat. When formulas sting or cast, they underapply. When labels shout big numbers without UVA clarity, they lean on false comfort. The price shows up as excisions, frozen spots, and time off work. Equity threads through this. Deeper skin tones burn less, so the culture says you're fine. But UVA doesn't ask. Hyperpigmentation worsens, melasma settles in, post-acne marks linger. Many mineral formulas leave a gray cast that's a non-starter in real life. If the only broad-spectrum option in your aisle ghosts you, you'll skip it. If you can't afford or access elegant textures, daily wear becomes a privilege. The people who need low-friction protection, the most often get the highest friction products. The cost calculus is plain. A bottle of good sunscreen runs $20 to $30. A single excision costs hundreds. Mohs surgery can reach thousands with facility fees. Reconstruction adds more. Time off work isn't covered by a label. Scar management isn't in the ad. Melasma treatment, peels, topicals, lasers, stretches into months and a small fortune, and none of it sticks without high UVA control. Prevention is cheaper, but only if the product is tolerable and the label leads you right. Here's a small moment that lands. A long-haul trucker jokes about his driver's tan. The derm shows him the famous photo of the unilateral sun damage case, the left side aged by UVA through glass. He nods, quiet for a beat, and pockets a small stick for his cheek and ear before every shift. It's not a lifestyle overhaul. It's a hinge decision that will save skin he'll still want when he retires. Kids make the stakes simpler. A sunburn before age 18 raises future risk. A camp counselor with a can of spray and 10 minutes for 20 kids will miss spots. A pump bottle and a practiced routine covers more skin. Habits learned at 8 survive grocery aisles at 28. Teach face, ears, neck, arms, hands, legs, feet, and you shrink a future clinic list. This isn't vanity. It's faces, jobs, confidence, dollars, and years. It's the difference between a clean check and a scar on the nose you cover every morning. When labels hide the UVA grade and formulas punish compliance, real people pay in tissue and time. Give them clarity and comfort, and they pay with a morning minute instead. What needs to change? Standards, speed, and honesty. To fix this, the rules have to tell the truth in plain sight. Start with the label. Put a real UVA metric on the front, PPD, PA, or a clear UVA grade tied to a tough standard. If a product shouts SPF 70, it should also display its UVA strength in a way a shopper can compare in 3 seconds. No more binary, broad-spectrum, pass-fail that hides weak long UVA performance behind a big UVB number. When you grade the invisible rays, the formulas change. Next, align digits with depth. Cap labeled SPF unless formulas demonstrate matching UVA protection. Europe's one-third rule, UVA protection at least a third of SPF, should be a floor, not a brag. If you want to sell SPF 100, prove long UVA hangs with it in vivo, not just in a bench test. That shuts down the arms race that sells confidence while renting protection. Speed matters, but not at the expense of safety. The FDA's new administrative order pathway can move faster if it uses global data intelligently. Modern filters like Uvinol A+, Tinosorb SM, and Mexoryl 400 have years of surveillance abroad. Don't lower the bar, broaden the evidence base. Require US-specific toxicology where gaps exist, but accept high-quality EU and Asian dossiers to avoid reinventing the wheel. Set timelines that mean months, not eras. Fix the paradox that stalls innovation. If older actives need new safety packages, don't make that the only homework on the desk. Run those reviews in parallel with evaluations of newer, more UVA-forward filters. If a new ingredient can reduce reliance on actives with absorption questions or stability quirks, that's a net safety win. Reward forward motion. Manufacturing honesty is non-negotiable. Mandate robust impurity limits, active surveillance for contaminants like benzene, and stress testing for degradation products such as benzophenone in octocrylene-based formulas. Require batch-level traceability and rapid public recall protocols that don't depend on private labs to ring the bell first. Put propellant supply chains under the same scrutiny as actives. Inhaled shortcuts don't belong in a lung. Testing has to reflect how people actually apply. Keep the 2 mg/cm2 lab standard for label claims, but add a secondary, standardized real-use panel, lower dose, mixed activity, reapplication timing, reported as a durability score. If a formula performs well at slightly leaner doses or under sweat, it earns a mark that means something on a soccer sideline. That nudges texture and film formation forward. Educate where behavior starts. Fund simple, repeatable campaigns around dose, timing, and clothing. 2 fingers, shot glass, 15 minutes, 2 hours, hats, and UPF. Put the map on the bottle. Small icons for missed zones, ears, scalp lines, hands, feet. Teach, spray into hands, then spread if you can't kill aerosols outright. Make school, camp, and workplace policies sun-smart. Shade breaks, permission to reapply. Shared pump bottles, sleeves for outdoor rolls. Equity needs engineering, not slogans. Incentivize elegant mineral formulas that disappear on deep skin tones. Grants, fast lanes, prizes tied to measurable cast reduction across shades. Support the inclusion of iron oxides in tinted minerals for pigment-prone skin. If the broad-spectrum options that people will actually wear are out of reach or out of stock for the communities that need them, the system failed. And say the quiet part out loud. Marketing should stop selling digits detached from depth. Ban front-of-pack claims that imply time all day, sunproof, or supremacy without UVA proof. Replace sport as a vibe with sport as a test. Sweat, rub, salt water, towel cycles with scores disclosed. Finally, build a feedback loop. Require adverse event and performance registries accessible to researchers. Encourage independent labs to publish audits. Protect whistleblowers inside supply chains. When a batch underperforms or a propellant source drifts, the fix should take days, not a summer. None of this kills sunscreen. It rebuilds trust. Standards that measure what matters, speed that brings better tools, honesty that shows the trade-offs. Those are the levers that move behavior before the biopsy. The meaning and the next move. One number blinded us to the rays that do the quiet damage, and the system let the shortcut pay. If you want the follow-up with the 3 filters to avoid, the 3 to trust, and a daily routine that works, subscribe now. Then watch the vanilla lie next to see how labels bend truth across your life.